Hi, everybody. Today is Tuesday, October 7th, 2025, and our dear friend, Colonel Wilkerson, joins us. Welcome back, Larry.
Good to be with you, even if I'm not in the aloha spirit. I see you're not either.
I've been working since 6 a.m.
uh, I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah. Larry, let me start. I think today is so important for Palestinians and the people in the Middle East because 2 years ago, this day we had an attack on Israelis, and in the aftermath of that day, and huge destruction in Gaza, a genocide happening. And where do you find Israel today? When, if you were to compare what Israel was before October the 7th and what Israel is today, how do you compare it?
Nima, I've been following Bibi Netanyahu's career since before he was finance minister, and then while he was finance minister, and then his time in the prime ministership. And I hesitate to say this because I'm not a big fan of the great man or any man, Hitler, for example, theory of international relations and the evolution of state power. I don't think one person is really all that important to it. In this case, I might be brought to make an exception because what I have watched Bibi Netanyahu do since I started following him not only is orchestrate his rise to power on the back of Mark Rich's oil company, Glencore, and then later other companies that spun off from it, which got Israel oil on a constant basis at a discounted price and really gave the spin up to the economy in Israel that Netanyahu then, of course, took credit for. All of this illegal as hell in international relations, illegal, and even at times illegal in terms of domestic Israeli law and also his great mentor's law, the United States. But what happened there was not only did he make Israel successful, he got a lot of money himself, personal money out of deals, much the way Prince Bandar schooled the Levant in the process of doing. You always get at least $1 billion every time you do a deal. So I watched this guy very closely, and then I watched him orchestrate very carefully and dramatically. And I know in my heart this is true, the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. When he did that, he closed off the only avenue remaining for Israel to be a liberal democratic state. Note, I did not say a liberal Jewish democratic state because that's an impossibility. It's a contradiction of terms. The moment you put Jewish in there, it's a theocracy. Whether it's religious or not is irrelevant. It's a theocracy when you put Jewish in there. So he got rid of the Labor Party, got rid of everything about that party and its power. Not everyone in the country, but all those with influence barred politics to them and took over Israel with the only brief interim session, if you will, being a person equally infamous to Bibi Netanyahu, Ariel Sharon, who you may recall actually led the invasion of Lebanon in 1981, 82. So since that time, the prospect for Israel being taken over by the original Ben Gurion type Zionists was always there, always latent. But there was this side of the political apparatus in Israel that did pretend to be at least a liberal democratic aspirant. They never were a liberal democracy. They can't be and be a Jewish state too. You just can't be. So it's a contradiction of terms. So Bibi did away with all of that. That's where we are today. And we're at the end of his long career that he has fashioned. And that end will be total destruction for the state of Israel, certainly for the Jewish state of Israel, if it even stays a state at all, and the end of Bibi Netanyahu. But it's going to be a glorious ending. And that's Bibi's dream, and that's his wish, a glorious ending. He will go down, he thinks, in the annals of the new state of Israel, which will be greater inevitably. and encompass the entire Levant, possibly. He will go down as the starter, the creator, the god of that. I think he's dead wrong. I think he's going to go down in infamy, much the same way Hitler did in his bunker. But that's Bibi's aspiration, and he wants to take the United States with him, success or failure.
When I look at the region and Israel is talking about 7-front war, they're talking about Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Iran, all these countries around Israel.
Don't leave out.
They're not most of Iran is not
East Africa and possibly China, and maybe Turkey.
The enemies are growing.
They're growing.
The number of enemies are growing. Yeah,
it's like Caesar said at one time: "My enemies are legion."
Larry, if I look, if to be sincere, I don't see any sort of win for Israel unless they take credit for what has happened in Syria. The only place that they can say they could achieve something is Syria, which I'm not sure that they have achieved it.
No, nor am I. Turkey's still looking at that with question marks all over it. And we're looking at the regime in Damascus with question marks all over it. David Petraeus' fawning performance notwithstanding, we're still looking at a man that stood by while people were beheaded. And from what I'm being told by sources in Damascus and Aleppo, is still killing people, especially Christians, Alawites, and others with whom he does not necessarily agree.
Despite the strategic, mindset of Israelis, something big has happened during the conflict in the Middle East, which was the public opinion all around the world, Larry. The way that the way that people are talking about Israel is totally different from what it was before October the 7th, before what has happened to, many of, people even in the mainstream media, they were so cautious about the way that they're approaching Israel. They're talking about Israel. That's not there anymore. No. That has changed. I don't know if Netanyahu and the people around him and those people in the United States, Zionists, who are trying to support Netanyahu and his administration, would be able to put it back in the same place it was before.
They're trying. They're trying. This business of the 250 state legislatures that went to Israel. Now Larry Ellison's purchase of half the communicative capability of the empire and other things like that. They're trying big time. They've got billions deployed to restore things. Nothing, Nima, nothing. I listened to Candace Young this morning at length. I listened to it 3 times. I wanted to hear every word she said. She's a very articulate woman. And they have been done major damage by what's happening around the assassination of Charlie Kirk. More and more, I must conclude that Israel had something to do with it. I have to. The facts are just so solid. And as Hercule Poirot said, and I mentioned a couple of times, I think to you once, motive, method, and means. And the motive is certainly there, because if I'm to believe Candace Young, and she keeps saying she wants to show the videos, she wants people to look, she wants people to answer her from TP. And what she's saying in essence is that not only was Charlie the biggest bad guy on the street, and I don't use that derisively, in terms of Trump's election, and in terms of MAGA and its cohesiveness under Trump, he was dramatically departing from that position. And he was doing it over the issue with Israel. That had to be stopped. And I think there is only one guess as to who thought it had to be stopped. Now, whether Netanyahu had anything to do with it directly or not, I mean, I go back to Rabin, he orchestrated that one. Or the billionaires or people behind them had something to do with it. I don't know. But I listened to her repeatedly, and she's very articulate. She's very on message. And I want to see what she's going to bring out further, because she says there are videos, for example, of Charlie saying essentially, I want you back in talking points. And I've watched some of the videos of the young people asking Charlie at the final meetings he was able to orchestrate about the situation in Israel. And I've listened to the audience applause when someone asks him a question about, isn't it too close? Isn't the relationship dangerous for us? Isn't too much money going to Israel? Shouldn't that money be going to the American taxpayer? Shouldn't we be? All these questions are coming out, and Charlie was just entertaining them. And the audience was really cheering when people would ask these questions. I'm told there were 5,000 people in that audience. So this is doing irreparable damage to Israel's tight relationship with especially 40-year-olds and 30-year-olds and unders in America, and ultimately doing damage to Netanyahu's whole propaganda campaign. And even this morning, when I was driving down to do the interview with the Germans, I fell into a piece on YouTube. I've got to go back to it and find it and read it more thoroughly. But it was talking about the campaign that Israel has just launched under Larry Ellison's leadership, and it'll go into CBS, it'll go into whatever his son has bought now and will be running. And this campaign is designed to reverse some of these losses. And I'm reading some of the ingredients of the campaign. It says, we must get into the textbooks. We must get into the schools. We must get into every place of education in America and re-educate the young people in America about the importance of Israel, about the absolute necessity for the relationship between the United States and Israel. We must do that. Well, they're already there. They're in every state, in every education chain in every state. We already have history books that have been rewritten by the Israelis in Virginia, for example, that retell the story of Palestine and Israel and the Nakba. They don't even mention the Nakba. So why are they so desperate? Well, they're desperate because they see that all of that is going by the wayside now. They're going to have to rebuild, refurbish the entire propaganda campaign. I don't think they're going to be able to do it. I think the American people are decisively, especially young people, and that's the future, moving away from this relationship. And they might move away dramatically compared with what's been so slow paced because of what's happening in Gaza, which isn't going to stop. I don't think it's going to stop. And if it does stop, it's going to be clear to them at least that this was a cooked game. I don't even think it's going to stop. But if it stops suddenly and Hamas agrees to everything and Israel starts implementing the plan and we start implementing the plan, everyone's going to see through that, I think, because it's just going to be the same thing with no war going on that will be prima facie evidence of the perfidy of the Israelis. Be like the past 20 years, really, that Netanyahu's been orchestrating this all along on a low burner in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem, and in Gaza. He's been doing this all along. It's just been on a low burner. October 7th put it on a hot burner, and we do not know, truly know, who orchestrated October the 7th yet. We do not. There has been no definitive investigation. As he has promised a number of times, there has been none. And I suspect we're going to find out some things about October the 7th that make Bibi's comments on it a total lie.
I want to talk about the October the 7th, but before going there, since you've mentioned Candace Owens, here is what she said about the case of Charlie Kirk, just in her recent podcast.
So Charlie writes in this group chat, just lost another huge Jewish donor, $2 million a year because we won't cancel Tucker. I'm thinking of inviting Candace. Somebody writes, oh. Charlie writes, Jewish donors play into all of the stereotypes. I cannot and will not be bullied like this, leaving me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause. And somebody writes, a donor writes, please do not invite Candace. That might feel good short term, but it's not good long term, in my opinion. Like all groups, you're going to get a wide variety of opinions. That nasty free will thing that God bestowed on us makes life frustrating at times after the dust settles a bit, maybe. So again, this is 48 hours before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. He was very clear and he was very explicit, and he did not back down, not in that Hamptons meeting, which they're all lying about, nor in this text thread. I'm not going to reveal the names of the other 7. Actually, you know what? I disagree with myself 4 seconds ago. Let's just throw in Josh Hammer for funsies. He's on this chat, okay?
Yeah.
I listened to that, and I listened to another one where she actually is explicit, not just about her problems with the situation, but about Charlie's.
Yeah. It's so strange, Larry, because I don't know if you know this, she's an ex-influencer, Laura Loomer, and she came out about it's amazing the way that she tries to put the blame right now in China. They're saying that China was behind.
Right. Well, you think that's funny? Look what I heard last night late from a good source. I told you about Gary Bernson and this guy Rodin, the Jewish guy or Israeli who's his partner in getting Maduro indicted and, passing intelligence through Laura Loomer and through others to Trump, which Trump has cited and believed. Well, now I learned that
Larry, sorry for interrupting you. Here is what she said. I just spoke with Congresswoman Anna Paulina, and she tells me that she has received evidence that China funded one of the groups under FBI investigation for ties to Taylor Robinson's Discord activity, where he, it's getting. Sorry for interrupting you. Go ahead.
No, you can't make this stuff up, but they can. They can make it up. And that's exactly what I was about to say about Bernson and Rodin. They're making it up about Maduro and passing it through people like Laura Loomer. I also found out that Bernson in particular, but also this other gentleman, I hesitate to call him that, were big providers of intelligence, if you will, quotes around intelligence, on China with regard to the attitude that was being taken by Rudy Giuliani at a time when you remember he was so anti-China and so forth. And that information was being passed from these same 2 people. And it was being passed to Rudy and from Rudy to Trump. Now, here's a really stellar crew of people you want to believe. Laura Loomer, Rudy Giuliani, and apparently these 2 that are so opposed to Maduro for money.
Yeah. I think the October the 7th, it was one of the main reasons that the Secretary of Defense of Israel resigned or was dismissed by Netanyahu. Larry, what was the main? It seems that even within the inner circle of Netanyahu, there are huge divisions when it comes to October the 7th. Even in Israel, they don't know what has happened. Many people don't know what has happened. Since Netanyahu was so much successful in just protecting the information.
Well, Netanyahu is a genius at what I would call closeting key information where only he and maybe 1 or 2 principals he trusts implicitly know about it, and bringing it out periodically to use to his advantage or hiding it to use to his advantage. That's one reason he doesn't want a really thorough investigation into October the 7th. I think what we would find there, at a minimum, is his complicity in paying Hamas through Qatari intermediaries with keeping Hamas alive and well, if you will, and armed and able to do what they did on October the 7th. Now, I'm not saying that Netanyahu knew that was what he was doing, but how could he not? But he's not going to let that out, of course. And at the same time, he kept that information from key people in his own ministry. And one of his favorite tactics is to, when something happens bad and his government can be held immediately responsible for it, is he goes in and plucks the ministers out and fires them, or whomever it might be, and fires them, or says he fires them. Sometimes they're resurrected, puts them in a different position where they're not so visible, in order to take some of the blame off himself. So he's very shrewd at this. I mean, Donald Trump could take some real hard lessons from Bibi Netanyahu is how to be a fascist. He is very good at what he does. It's a very small state. It's a very small bureaucracy. It's a very closed bureaucracy now by his will. He controls all the propaganda mechanisms like Trump is trying to do through people like Larry Ellison. But we're a big country, and it's going to be very difficult for Trump to do this. It's not difficult to do that in Israel, particularly when most of the Jewish citizens of Israel are predisposed to your doing it, and the Arab and other citizens of Israel who equal the Jewish citizens, outnumber them now because so many Jewish citizens have left, are cowed. And they're not going to say anything. They're not going to do anything. Maybe every now and then one of their Knesset members might say something, but they get rebuked completely and maybe even removed from the Knesset. So they're very reluctant to speak out. So it's a very closed society, and Netanyahu is the only one with the keys.
Yeah. Larry, I think the war with Iran is one of the main issues in today's, policies of the Trump administration, because the people who are close, who supported Donald Trump to get elected, are going against these sort of policies in the Middle, endless wars, what has happened in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the role of Israel in all those policies. Here is what Steve Bannon said in considering both the conflict with Iran and October the 7th.
Netanyahu have to approach. He totally trumped up, bald-faced lie about the Persians. They had greater strategic ambitions, and they didn't care if they sucked the United States into a 20 or 30-year war. Those days are over. President Trump has asserted himself that, hey, you are a protector. What did Ignatius say? He's given orders, right? He's given orders the way it should be. If they want to go do it on their own, hey, God bless you. Go for it. But do not suck us in. We're not in for this. It's outrageous what has happened over the last couple of years, and we still don't have an investigation on October 7th. And believe me, if the hands were clean of Netanyahu, you would have had an investigation and been out in 30 days. Write that down with your number 2 pencil, because that's going to come and you're going to be shocked by it. There's no way that just kind of happened.
So this is not the left. This is not the progressive. This is
they're falling apart on the right.
Yeah, you can say the right of the right and the far right of but after all, these people somehow they come to the same sort of conclusion that they don't see any point in these endless wars for the United States. And I don't know if these messages are getting to the Trump administration.
I don't think they are, because I think his messages, as you say, are being carefully screened by the sycophants all around him. And I mean them all. I mean Kristi Noem. I mean the FBI people. I mean Justice Department in general, which has now lost more people who've just left than we did during the George W. Bush administration. And I thought that was really traumatic. We lost so many good lawyers who just didn't want to stay around and serve Alberto Gonzalez. They just did not want to. I think Trump is getting bad words. I think he's getting incorrect words. I think he's getting bad intelligence. And I think he's acting on that. I think that's what we're seeing. And I'm very, very disappointed in the Southern Command commander for going along with this on the high seas with these assassinations. That's essentially what they are. And I think probably the presence of the U.S. flotilla, if you will, off the coast of Venezuela is another indication of this particular commander's. I can't say anything other than being maybe must be a Trump acolyte or something, because I can't believe that this person's going along with these things. This is not only making Southern Command's tenure in the region volatile as hell, it's also illegal under international law and under domestic law. So you get a new president, let's say we don't go ahead with a coup, which is becoming more and more questionable, and we get a new president, these people could be hauled up on charges. And I would, if I were a new president, I would haul a few of them up on charges and make examples of them. I'd court-martial them.
Do they really buy what Netanyahu is trying to say? Because he's saying that Iran with this is increasing the range of the missiles in order to reach the United States, to hit New York, to hit other cities in the United States. Here is what he said, Larry.
Intercontinental ballistic missiles for 8,000 kilometer range. What does that mean? They add another 3,000 kilometers, and they've got under their atomic guns, the New York City in target, Washington, Boston, Miami, Mar-a-Lago. Okay? So that is a very great danger. You don't want to be under the nuclear gun of these people who are not necessarily rational and who chant death to America.
I think
he's really losing it. Nima, he is really losing it. I mean, he even looks like a clown now. It's such an old argument. Tony Blair brought it out in London. I remember this. I heard it on the radio and went into the secretary and I said, you know what the Prime Minister of England just said? That Saddam Hussein could hit London in 45 minutes? There is absolutely no intelligence to support that. Absolutely none. He said, he didn't say that, did he? I said, let's get it back on. Let's get it back on, because it was CNN, I think, and they were running a tape, you know. And sooner or later, he got out of his office and he said, I just heard him say it. He said Saddam Hussein could hit London in 45 minutes. They'd already added a dossier to ours that was pure bullshit. I mean, absolute total bullshit, written by a graduate student at some minuscule London school that went into all this stuff that was patently a lie. And we didn't even take it. We call it the British white paper and threw it in the garbage can. This is the kind of thing Netanyahu's doing now. They've been doing it for a long time. And let me tell Netanyahu something else. If anybody has the missile range, warhead matchup capability to destroy a portion of the United States with a nuclear weapon, it is the number one criminal state on the face of the earth. North Korea, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. They haven't done it. And they haven't done it because they know they would disappear if they did. So his remarks are just patently stupid, but that's what I find him becoming now, a patently stupid man. He's losing it. He's losing it in his own fever over doing what he wants to do before he gets out of the job or going to jail or whatever. And he's losing it. And all of this is coming in on him. This business with Charlie Kirk, the reality of young people in America losing their, favoritism towards Israel, even having a distaste for Israel. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, Candace Young, all of this stuff is closing in on Bibi. Not only that, from what I'm hearing, not only has Hamas effected an IED program that is devastatingly effective, particularly as the Israelis have closed into this confined area of Gaza City, and they have begun to kill IDF and blow up tanks at a rate that no one ever expected them to be able to do, that they're even having questions in their own minds, these are the IDF commanders of note, as to whether they should continue anything. And they believe, most of them anyway, they believe they are going to have to, because this is a big farce. This deal, supposedly, is a big farce. Netanyahu is never going to keep it. He's dissembled about it. Even if he were to keep it, Hamas is not going to disarm. And they're going to have to go back to fighting, if you will, or get killed. So where are we? Where is Bibi? He's caught on his own sword.
He said something amazing, and I don't know what is that, because since we know everything that Israel has to fight, to weapons, all the air defense system, it all comes from, they all come from the United States. They're coming from the United States, but it seems that he's offering, he's suggesting something else. Here is, I want to know, what is he talking about in this video, in this clip?
tell you, we shared it with America, but I can't share it with you. Okay? The most advanced offensive weapons on the planet, things that none of the superpowers have, developed by Israel, shared with America.
Stop.
He's right about some very esoteric weapons that, for example, kill civilians better. He's right about that. And he may be right about one other thing. I've been trying to get this information, and it's been very difficult. They guard this very, very closely. I'm told that they have perfected a means for launching probably some sort of cruise missile from surface off their submarines with a nuclear warhead. And I'm told that if Iran is struck with a nuclear weapon, it will probably be through that method. The North Arabian Sea, if you know anything about submarine warfare, the North Arabian Sea has some of the best convergence zones of all the oceans in the world. And what a CZ is, a convergence zone, is where your acoustic, your sonars, both passive and active, really don't work very well. Sometimes not at all. So during the Cold War, for example, the Soviets and us would hide in these CZs in the Indian Ocean. And they're really dominant just underneath the Sea of Oman and the North Arabian Sea in that area right there. Has to do with temperature, salinity, and things like that. You can hide in there and not be known. No one knows where you are, period. Not with the most sophisticated technological means in the world. So what are they doing with that sub or two that are in the North Arabian Sea? And if they have this new capability, that gives me a much deeper worry about them using a nuclear weapon should they become in an existential situation with Iran, which they will very rapidly. And I'm still convinced they're going to war with them. And that brings me back to the interview you showed with Bannon. How does he know that? How does he know that Donald Trump will not follow Bibi into that war? It's beyond me, but I will tell you this. If you want to scatter the 18 and 24-year-olds in America into Mexico and Canada and every place else in the world, if they got the money, just institute a draft, institute conscription in America. We'd fall apart. And that would be necessary if we were going to go into Iran with the kind of capability Bibi would need for us to effect regime change. I hope Bannon's right. I don't know where he gets that information, but I hope he's right.
Here is what Donald Trump said about the deal, the peace plan.
We're going to have a deal. It's a hard thing for me to say that when for years and years they've been trying to have a deal with Gaza. But, literally for centuries, okay, if you really think about it. But we're going to have a Gaza deal, I'm pretty sure, yeah.
And what do you the hostages about the talks?
Well, I'm the one that got the hostages back. Remember that, I'm the one that.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
Centuries? Centuries? Where does Donald get his history from, Laura Loomer? Centuries? It's been Palestine for centuries. The man he's just unforgivable in his ignorance. I'm sorry, go ahead. You had a question.
Yeah, the question, Larry, in this talk, in this interview, he says that in his communication with the press, he says that Turkey is just doing a great job in terms of, convincing Donald Trump that they need a peace plan for what's going on in Gaza. I don't know how effectively Turkey is playing the role with the Trump administration, but how do you think that Donald Trump would be somehow influenced by Erdogan?
I think Doug McGregor's right, and Doug knows Turkey much better than I. I was listening to him way up in the early hours, wee hours of the morning, 3 a.m. in the morning. I'm listening to him on YouTube, and he was just going on and on about Erdogan and the fickleness of Erdogan and the different directions he's looking in all the time, whether it's looking at the Kurds in Syria or looking at the government in Damascus or looking what the Israelis are doing in Syria or looking at his desire to pierce reverse almost that Central Asia Chinese Base Road Initiative and make it a Turkic initiative. I couldn't help but think of Hugh Pope's book, Sons of the Conquerors, which is a brilliant book on how all those Central Asian cities and towns from Samarkand to Dushanbe and on to Xinjiang province have a Turkic-based language. And so you can do trade in every one of them with just a fundamental basis of the Turkic base to each of their languages. So it's an incredible boon for trade and the economy. But Erdogan's going to reverse that BRI from China and head it the other way? Come on, man. Give me a break. Now, Doug didn't argue that. He just said that Erdogan's thinking about it. That'll show you how far-fetched some of Erdogan's ideas are. And if it weren't for being bailed out by others, Erdogan would be probably gone too now. He's in the same situation Macron is in France, different reasons, but much of it is economic. So I don't know how to parse him anymore. Doug thinks, at least if I understood him right, that his inclination is to keep the United States on his side as much as possible because he still realizes we can do a lot of damage. So he's hedging his bets in terms of turning eastward or turning southward. Wants to do that, wants to rebuild the Ottoman Empire, if you will, to a certain extent, but he's really wary of Washington, especially with Trump there. So I have no idea how to say where he's going.
Larry, how did you find the way that Vladimir Putin responded to the people, to the press? They asked him about the Tomahawk missiles being sent to Ukraine and Europe, because it's making huge, sort of discussions within those people who are against the war in Ukraine. Some people say Putin was not that much powerful, that much, strong in his sort of language toward the West, toward the United States. War in the United States, that could be hugely consequential if these people are so much concerned about the escalation. But the other part say that Putin doesn't need to go in that direction. He knows what's going on the battlefield. He feels so comfortable for the position of Russia, and that's why he's not that much concerned to go in that direction. And the other thing that yesterday happened, Donald Trump said that he has sort of made his decision on sending Tomahawk missiles to NATO and Ukraine, but wants to know what they're doing with them first. They're not going to put them as, it's not home decoration, stuff.
I go back, I think it was Glenn Dyson, my and your friend Glenn Dyson, I think you've interviewed Glenn, who asked the question of Putin in a recent press conference what he thought about the paper tiger connotation that Trump put on Russia. And Putin answered, and then when he got the substance of his answer, he essentially said, NATO's the paper tiger. He's right. He's absolutely right. And when you look at Tomahawk, and I've known Tomahawk ever since 1983, 84, when it was deployed first to the Pacific Command for use against the Soviet Union in our defense of Japan, OPLAN 5001. We didn't want it. It was a pinprick weapon, a very pinprick weapon. And we knew our role was to so affect the far eastern TVD of the Soviet Union, Sea of Okhotsk, Kamchatka Peninsula, places like that, that the Western Front, which had just blown up because the Soviets had invaded Europe, it was to get their attention on the West to pull troops away from on the East, to get the West to pull troops away and send them to the East. Our admiral said back to Washington, got to have the nuclear one. Got to have it, because otherwise we're not even going to get the Russians' attention with a HE, high explosive Tomahawk, pinprick weapon. We were not successful in doing that because General Vesey, then the chairman, and the president, Ronald Reagan, didn't think that was a good idea. They thought it sent a destabilizing signal to Russia, whatever. But we still put it down as a marker. If we ever implement OPLAN 5001, we need Tomahawk D, not the regular high explosive Tomahawk. Fast forward, Tomahawk has had some upgrades. It's had some good upgrades, but it is still extremely slow. It can be shot down easily by conventional air defenses. And when it comes at you, you do not know what kind of warhead it has.
Mm.
So the only destabilizing aspect of it is that latter. Putin knows that. And that's what he's got to take into his calculations if tomahawks begin to rain down on Russia. Now, they won't rain down because we don't have enough to make them rain down. They're very expensive. Last time I checked, it was about $2.5, $3 million a missile. And they don't do that much damage in the conventional mode. So I would go so far as to say it's a pretty antiquated missile system, really. It's so old, so slow, and has such a small warhead. It's ingenious the way it negotiates and goes out there and does things, but it needs a lot of satellite data and a lot of updates along the route and so forth. And he knows that would have to be U.S. personnel doing that. And he has categorically said that that will be NATO entering the war. And we know what that means. So he's given his warning.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Carl, for being with us today.
Is the time all gone already? Wow, I've done so much talking today, I can't keep up with myself.
Yeah, great.
1.5 straight hours with the Germans.
But Larry, after all, what was the message? How did you find the way that they're describing the situation in Germany? Because they talk about it, yeah?
Volatile, economically very destabilizing. And they really wanted to pick my brain before the interview on what Jim Baker and George H.W. Bush and Colin Powell and Ronald Reagan actually said to Gorbachev. And I gave them the straight poop. And, you know, their response was, how did it get so distorted? I said, very carefully, Bill Clinton on, there were people who wanted to distort it. They wanted what we have today. They wanted to take Russia on. And you Germans have helped. Not really the German people. I didn't say that. I said,
Not just helping, but sacrificing themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the most successful manufacturing entities on the face of the earth.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Isn't it? Isn't it? Anyway. Well,
Thank you, Larry.
good
See you
luck.
on Friday.
Yep. Take care.
Take care.
I'll be in aloha attire.
Yeah.
You be too.
Yeah.
See you.
See you. Bye-bye.